Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and today Wizards of the Coast released the full deck list for your 4 Challenger decks that will be coming out on April 6th. We're going to talk about this product and go through all of these deck lists so you know what to expect and maybe decide at the end if this is a product you're interested in or not. Quickly, before we get started though, if you look at the description below, you'll find a few ways to help support what we do here at the channel, one of which is our Patreon page. Also, you'll find some links to products on Amazon. If you make any purchases on Amazon, once you go through that initial link, we'll get a small percentage. And then finally, Flipside Gaming still offering the promo code for our viewers. When you use that code, save yourself some cash. We'll also get a small percentage as well for the channel. Those avenues for supporting us are always appreciated. And with that being said, let's get into the information for today. Now, if you're not familiar with the idea behind this product, these are supposed to be standard decks that are competitive in maybe a Friday Night Magic or even any sort of tournament scene. These are supposedly supposed to win you some games. So the question is, do they build us decks that can win some games? Now, they do consider this a ramp into competitive standard, meaning you're not going to open up the deck that you saw win the GP last weekend. You're going to open up, though, some decks that actually do have a competitive core to them. And these are decks that have established themselves through a couple different metas at least. Now, the downside to that is you're not going to see a whole lot of cards from Ixalan and Rivals of Ixalan here, especially Rivals of Ixalan, which financially I'm sure they don't want to cut into the sales from the newest sets, so they went light on those cards, which means you may have to still pick up some expensive singles to really flush out these decks in some cases. So we'll be looking at that, but let's look at these deck lists. We're going to start off with Hazoret Aggro, and this is basically your mono red aggro deck, or at least a core version of it. So let's see what's in here. First card here is Chandra Torch of Defiance, and you get a copy of that. When you consider this is a $29.99 product, this isn't a bad deal at all, right? You could argue that this first deck we're going to look at has the best financial value out of the box, but they're all actually pretty good considering the price point. And that's fantastic. Now, keep in mind, though, once these things actually hit shelves, the cards that are contained within will start taking a hit on the secondary market because there's going to be more supply out there. So do remember that. I wouldn't buy one of these because you think you're going to flip it or get crazy financial value at the end of the day. I would only buy one if maybe it's a good way for you to get a number of cards you're trying to get for whatever reason, or you actually want to build the deck and flush it out and add cards to it to build something competitive. That's really the purpose here, I think. So we start off with Chandra. What else do we get? 4 copies of On-Crop Crasher. 4 copies of Bomat Courier. 4 Fanatical Firebrand. This is one of the few Rivals cards you'll see, honestly, in these decks. A copy of Glorybringer. Harsh Mentor, 3 of those. A copy of Hazoret the Fervent. Again, really nice value there. 3 copies of Kari Zev Skyship Raider. 3 copies of Solskar Mage. 2 copies of Abrade. 4 Lightning Strike. 2 Magma Spray. 4 Shock. 4 copies of Sunscorched Desert as we move into lands. And 20 Mountains. So as you can see here, I mean, it's a pretty nice base for your mono red aggro deck. Now, sure, you'd have to probably buy more Hazorets, maybe another Chandra, and beyond that, you have to start thinking about Rekindling Phoenixes and such. That can still get expensive if you want to take this from a competitive deck to a deck that can actually win like a major tournament, right? But if you're just going to play Friday Night Magic, I mean, this would probably be just fine. Let's take a look at the sideboard they give you, though. You get 2 copies of PNLR. 2 Kari Zev's Expertise, 4 Chandra's Defeat, 2 Magma Spray, 2 Key to the City, and 3 copies of Sentinel Totem. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Next we have Vehicle Rush. As you can imagine, this is Mardu Vehicles. Mardu Vehicles has been a fantastic deck through a number of metas now. It's still competitive in this current meta, although again, you would have to upgrade it a little bit if you really want to push it to like the tier 1 version of this deck. But let's take a look at it. You'll start off with 4 copies of Bomat Courier, 3 copies of Depala Pilot Exemplar, 2 copies of PNLR, 4 copies of Scrap Heap Scrounger. 4 copies of Toolcraft Exemplar. 4 copies of Veteran Motorist. 4 Lightning Strike. 4 Unlicensed Disintegration. A copy of Aetherspear Harvester. A copy of Cultivator's Caravan. 4 Heart of Kurans. That's actually pretty sweet. Copy of Sky Sovereign Consul Flagship. As we move to land, you get 3 copies of Aether Hub. 1 Concealed Courtyard. 1 Dragonskull Summit. 2 Evolving Wilds. 1 Inspiring Vantage. 4 Spire of Industry. 3 Unclaimed Territory. And 5 Plains. 3 mountains, and finally 1 swamp. So again, looks like the vehicle deck, right? You could make some upgrades to it. A lot of them are running like Hezeret nowadays, stuff like that. But for the most part, you at least have the core here. So let's go ahead and look at the sideboard. You get another copy of Aetherspear Harvester. You're going to get 3 copies of Harsh Mentor. 4 Duress. 2 Chandra's Defeat. 2 Magma Spray. A Cast Out. And 2 Crook of Condemnations. Alright, so let's move on to our third deck. And that is Second Sun Control. Basically, it's Approach of the Second Sun Control deck. This is one of those decks that's kind of a fan favorite. It's fallen off a little bit recently, but you still see them put up some decent results every once in a while in some tournaments. So it's not a bad deck by any means currently, but it was maybe a little bigger, you could argue, at the beginning of the previous meta. But let's go ahead and see what you get here. We'll start off with 1 copy of Kefnet the Mindful. 3 copies of the key card here, Approach of the Second Sun. 3 copies of Fumigate. 4 Censor. A copy of Farm to Market. 4 Glimmer of Genius. 4 Opt. Copy of Renewed Faith in the Main. Settle the Wreckage, one of the few Ixalan rares that you see in these. Supreme Will, 4 of those. Ether Meltdown, 4 copies of that. You get 4 Cast Out. 2 Field of Ruin as we move into lands. Good card to have, actually, though. 2 Ibnu Rivulet. 4 copies of Irrigated Farmland. 10 Islands. And 8 Plains. Alright, so yeah, Approach of the Second Sun Control deck. Again, not all the pieces there necessarily, but a nice base for a competitive deck. Now let's move on to the sideboard. 2 copies of Glyph Keeper. Another copy of Kefnet the Mindful. 4 Regal Caracols. That's actually kind of cool. 4 Negate. 2 more copies of Renewed Faith. And 2 copies of Spell Pierce. Okay, let's go on to our last deck. This is Counter Surge. You're probably more familiar with the name Constrictor or Golgari Constrictor or Constrictor Energy. That's basically what this deck is. So this is actually the core base of a very powerful deck currently in the meta. It's still doing really well. It's done well traditionally, continues to do well. Again, it's missing a lot of the key cards that you would like to see in a deck like this. Some of them a little pricey, but you're going to see at least a decent beginning for this deck. And let's jump in. 3 copies of Dream Stealer. 4 copies Glint Sleeve Siphoner. 2 Gonti Lord of Luxury. 4 Long Tusk Cub. 3 Rishkar Pima Renegade. 2 copies Scrap Heap Scrounger. 3 Virtuous Gearhulk. A copy of Walking Ballista. 4 Winding Constrictor, one of the key cards here. 2 Walk the Plank. 4 Blossoming Defense. You get a copy of Fatal Push, the elusive Fatal Push. 2 Hour of Glory. 4 Aether Hub as we move into land. 4 Foul Orchard. 2 Heshep Oasis. You get 8 Swamps. And finally, 7 Forests. So definitely you probably see what I mean here. I mean, you're not going to find Vraska's Contempt or anything like that necessarily, unfortunately, but you at least have the core of the deck, the start of a really strong competitive deck here. So let's move into the sideboard to wrap things up. You're going to find 2 Die Young, 1 copy of Dispossess, 4 Duress, 2 Appetite for the Unnatural, a copy of Slice and Twain, 3 Cartouche of Ambition, and finally 2 copies of Lifecrafter's Bestiary. Alright, so now that we've seen the deck list, here's my final thoughts on the product. I'm going to say this, I think this is actually worth the $29.99. If you're in the market for this type of thing, you are getting your money's worth here, and I'm always happy to see that there's value packed in here. I don't think that there's so much value that they're going to get out of the hands of the players that people are going to try to flip them. I don't think that's the smart thing to do with this product. I mentioned that at the top of the show, but if you're thinking, you know what, I'm going to buy a bunch of those mono red decks and try to sell the Chandras and the Hezarats off, very quickly, they're going to be going down in value when this hits shelves. So keep that in mind because there's just more supply out there. So I don't think this is something you want to try to flip or anything like that. I think what this product is all about is for players that are maybe either A, looking for a number of cards that are involved in this deck and you're finding a good value and you're basically one-stop shopping, getting a lot of things you're missing for your collection. Maybe you're thinking of building a deck that's not even one of these 4 decks, but includes a number of the cards and you want to get them, and this is just kind of an easy way to do it, right? That's one way to go about it. The second person this is for is the person who's trying to break into competitive standard, and they don't have a large card base to put together these decks. So this is something they can pick up for $30, and you're not going to take this to the GP necessarily. I mean, you can just for fun, but don't expect to, like, win it. But if you're a Friday Night Magic, you might actually pull some victories with a deck like this, even against some of the really more fleshed out versions if you get lucky enough, right? So it is there for somebody who's at the Friday Night Magic and wants to participate but doesn't have the cards to participate. Now they can do it and not feel like they're just getting completely crushed, right? But ultimately, you're probably going to want to start thinking about upgrades for these decks, which can get pricey too. So keep that in mind depending on which deck you choose, what kind of upgrades you need to add to it. So ultimately, I do think it's a good product for the price point, but it's only for, I would say, a rather narrow group of players. Outside of that, if you're somebody who is used to maybe cracking a lot of booster packs from draft or sealed and then putting together decks and picking up the last few singles you need or something like that, and you're really super competitive in standard and are staying on the cutting edge of the meta, well, this isn't the product for you. Or if you're a casual player that likes draft or sealed and just generally likes to throw together casual decks, you might not necessarily need something like this either. So if you fall in that middle ground, though, yeah, it's good value and it's going to be a fine product for you. It just depends on exactly what your goals are at the end of the day. With that being said, I hope this video helps a little bit. We're going to be back tomorrow with our regular Market Watch edition that we do every Saturday. Next week, Masters 25 previews will be coming. We'll be reporting on those every day, so I look forward to that. And of course, we'll do a set review and look at everything as a whole at the end. Until next time, though, thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.